and I am a literacy reading specialist. I geek out about the topic I'm going to talk about right now. So I'm just going to go ahead and get started and help us think about how do we demystify the science of reading. The term the science of reading encompasses a really extensive body of research and empirical evidence built over many, many years to delve into the development of proficient reading and writing skills, the challenges that some of our readers encounter, and the implementation of effective assessment and intervention strategies. Although the foundations for effective reading practices have been in place for decades, the recent surge in the popularity of the air quote, the science of reading has really heightened the focus on evidence-based approaches in literacy instruction. Over the course of history, diverse theories and teaching methods for reading has emerged, and the science of reading really, it aims to put a spotlight on approaches grounded in empirical research. The research has consistently shown that a systematic and explicit teaching approach covering phonics, phonemic awareness, vocabulary, fluency, and comprehension is vital for cultivating proficient reading skills. The science of reading emphasizes understanding the language structures, the interplay of sounds and letters, and the significance of decoding skills. And despite a wealth of evidence supporting these principles, there continues to be ongoing reading debates and reading wars, and variations in educational practices persistent. The increased use of the term, the science of reading, it's come about in more recent years, and it has led to some misunderstanding with different stakeholders interpreting it in various ways. Some perceive it as advocating for maybe a special method, while others use it as a broader call for evidence-based approaches to literacy education. What is crucial to recognize is that the science of reading is not a one-size-fits-all prescription, but it's a guiding framework informed by research. Effective literacy instruction requires considering individual differences among our learners and integrating evidence-based strategies into a really comprehensive and balanced approach. Can you just put your thumb up if you've heard of the simple view of reading? Yeah, okay. All right. Yay. Some of you have. So surprisingly, some educators who are right there in the field might not be familiar with this concept, but it's a really powerful formula that breaks down reading into two fundamental components: word recognition or decoding, and language comprehension. This simple view formula, which has been backed by just a wealth of research, it's not a theoretical construct, but it's a really practical tool for educators. It helps in identifying reading weaknesses, allowing us to really tailor instruction accordingly. You'll see two different models on this slide. I want to first address the model in the upper right corner of the slide. In 1986, researchers Goff and Tumner, they introduced this formula, and it looks like this: word recognition or decoding multiplied by language comprehension equals reading comprehension. It's not just about adding up these skills, it's about how these skills work together in tandem. The key is to understand that both word recognition and language comprehension need to be between 0 and 1, indicating the range from no skill to mastery. Now, why is this formula important? Well, it actually predicts a student's reading comprehension score based on their word recognition and language comprehension abilities. It's not just a theoretical concept, it's a tool that can be applied. And remember, it's not about adding it up, but it's multiplying them. So Goff and Tumner introduced this simple view of reading to emphasize the role of word recognition or decoding. And some educators believe that strong decoding skills weren't really necessary if language abilities were strong. However, the formula shows that is definitely not the case. And in fact, it clarifies that strong reading comprehension requires both strong word recognition and language comprehension. So practically, what does this mean for educators? I mean, it means we need to focus on teaching students to decode expertly and provide them with strong content knowledge. It's about addressing weaknesses early on so that decoding skills match up with language comprehension abilities. Intervention for struggling readers is crucial, And again, it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. We need to identify whether a student's weakness is in word recognition or language comprehension, or sometimes both. And that's where the simple view formula comes in handy. It helps us to understand that word recognition and language comprehension they're separate, but equally important skills. And as a reminder, the simple view is not a theoretical framework. It's backed by scientific research. It's not a concept. It's really a practical tool for educators to help students reach their maximum potential. And as we learn about the simple view of reading, we've discovered it's not actually so simple. Each part of the simple view equation represents a set of sub-skills or factors related to reading. So how is Scarsborough's popular infographic, The Reading Rope? That's on the other side of this, on the left-hand side of the screen. It helps educators to understand how the simple view of reading sub-skills combine and intertwine to support learning to read. Some educators may confuse Scarsborough's infographic as a separate model from the simple view of reading, but really, essentially, it does show us visually what's most important for teaching reading. The reading rope complements and adds some sub-skills, but it's not separate from the simple view of reading. Experienced teachers know that the true literacy is more than just being able to sound out the letters on a page. Skilled readers need to be able to master both what the words are and what they mean. And to do this successfully, they bring together various skills like vocabulary, language structure, verbal reasoning. The rope models can help educators better understand what it really takes to create skilled readers. Scarsborough invented the concept of the reading rope, I think in the early 1990s. She had originally used this to help parents understand the various skills that their children needed to master to become proficient readers. And she actually had originally twisted a model using pipe cleaners to demonstrate the point. And then I think it was in 2001, the model was published in the Handbook of Early Literacy Research, and reading teachers immediately saw how useful it was. And it became a staple for educating new teachers as well as parents. I've worked with schools that actually share this reading rope with parents as they're talking about and helping to describe the strengths and area of needs for their readers. So Scarsborough's rope contains two main sections, word recognition and language comprehension. Each of these comprises several smaller strands woven together, and these strands become the rope that represents complete skilled readers. All of the components are interconnected and interdependent, and we know that if just one strand is weak, it affects the rope and the reader as a whole. So the lower section of Scarsborough's rope is focused on full word recognition. These are the skills we need to think about most when we talk about teaching students how to read. So imagine a reader sounding out at the letters on the page or putting together phonics sounds and syllables. These are basics of word recognition. So the first strand, phonological awareness, that's really the ability to recognize and manipulate the individual sounds, sometimes called the phonemes within spoken words. It includes skills such as rhyming, segmenting words into syllables, and manipulating sounds within words. Phonological awareness really does provide the foundation for phonics instruction. Students learn to speak without ever needing to see the written words. But when they learn to read, they need to recognize the sounds they make with their mouth to correspond with the words that they see on the page. And this is a really very early learning skill that sets the stage for what follows. So the next thread, decoding, or also called phonics, is what we picture when we see beginning letters. It's the systematic relationship between the letters and the sounds they represent. It includes understanding letters correspondence, decoding unfamiliar words by applying those sound-symbol relationships, and blending sounds to form words. Phonics instruction gives students the tools to decode printed words. Then we have sight word recognition. This involves the ability to recognize high-frequency words by sight without decoding. These words, aren't always following those regular phonetic patterns, and they appear frequently in written text. And it's really important to build a repertoire sight word
to boost fluency. But word recognition on its own, it doesn't create fluent readers, as we know from the simple view of reading. If students don't know what the words themselves mean, they really aren't reading. And understanding the meaning of words on their own really isn't useful. So proficient, skilled readers understand the text they're reading as a whole. They draw on meaningful conclusions and finding important takeaways. So the upper strand of Scarsborough's rope is key to creating strong readers. The background knowledge strand of the rope is where knowledge building, ELA curriculum, and cross-curriculum learning can really come into play. Students reading a story about a family who's maybe immigrating to another country will get a lot more out of it when they understand more about immigration in general. For teachers, this means placing reading choices in context. Use reading at any age as part of the larger lesson on a topic, and students will develop a deeper understanding and improve literacy skills at the same time. Building a rich vocabulary means students can enjoy reading a wider variety of books. When you have to stop every few sentences to look up a word, you're likely to give up on reading a lot faster. So even worse would be if a student didn't stop to find out the meaning of the word, then they weren't actually even reading it. When we look at the language structure, we generally mean syntax, which is like the order of words, and then also semantics, which is the meaning of words. English has, as we know, lots of different rules and for the patterns and order of words known as syntax. Semantics, it really delves deep into how words and phrases combine to create meaning and how an author's word choice affects the meaning. We know it's a really complicated topic, and we know that good readers develop it throughout their life. High school and even beyond high school, we're still developing and mastering that. So when it comes to Scarsborough's rope, verbal reasoning refers to understanding when and how words are being figuratively and literally used. It includes things like metaphors, analogies, idioms, and other figurative language. And again, students pick some of this up in class, but they continue to learn this throughout their instruction, and they do need explicit instruction in this. So students learn and gain literacy knowledge by being exposed to a wide variety of literary genre and styles, and this is why a strong curriculum covers, as we know, fiction, nonfiction, poetry, and all other forms of literary works. And generally speaking, the more types of reading a child encounters, the more advanced their literacy knowledge becomes. So we know that Scarsborough's rope can be useful in many different ways. It helps teachers themselves identify where struggling readers are. It can help, for instance, maybe a student may be very good at sounding out words on a page, but perhaps they maybe lack the vocabulary or maybe verbal reasoning to make sense of what they're reading. So once they identify the weak strand, a teacher can make adjustments and offer enrichment or intervention to help the student succeed. And then again, as I said before, this model can also be helpful to share with parents. It can help them to understand perhaps why their child is struggling or why a teacher is using a particular method in the class. And it can also be a good tool just to reinforce and let parents know this is why it's important to read at home. This is what's happening. You're developing vocabulary. You're helping them to gain background knowledge. So let's consider some assessment types in light of what I shared so far in the context of the science of reading. And I actually put a pause and ponder question at the bottom. It's just something for you to think about, now, or maybe jot some notes down as you're thinking about, gosh, what are the implications that this has on my work? All right. So let's look at the three types of assessments these are three that I often share in light of the context and work around the science of reading. Our first type of assessment is the universal screener. This is a brief, standardized tool designed to efficiently identify children who may be at risk assessment. You might have a phoneme segmentation fluency assessment, that's the PSF, or the CLC is a correct letter sound. You might also have a whole word fluency, or ORF, which is oral reading fluency. So those are just some of the assessments that you might already have access to. And if you're using a screener, a lot of screeners, when you break it down, you can look at specifically at those different types of assessments within that so that you can identify where in word recognition are perhaps our students having difficulty. Language comprehension, assessments, you might assess a student's comprehension ability through tasks that require understanding and interpretation of reading language. This may include comprehension questions, summarization tasks, or inferential questions based on passages. Recognizing whether the student is struggling with language comprehension, which could also include a need for perhaps vocabulary development or explicit instruction in comprehension strategies or exposure to a wide range of text. We want to use assessments that measure both word recognition and language comprehension simultaneously to gain a real true understanding of where they are at in terms of their comprehension and their reading proficiency. And you really want to analyze the interaction between the decoding and the comprehension, because a student may have strong decoding skills, but struggle with comprehension, or vice versa. And this insight can really guide targeted intervention. You also want to tailor instruction based on the specific needs identified through the blue area, the word recognition and the comprehension assessments. And you want to provide targeted instruction where the student really is struggling. The implementation of differentiated instruction to address both decoding and language comprehension may involve adjusting the level of difficulty in reading materials, or maybe incorporating strategies that support this comprehension. We also want to remember to regularly monitor a student's progress in both decoding and language comprehension using progress monitoring tools. You want to adjust assessments over time to reflect change in their abilities, and then use that ongoing assessment data to inform instructional decisions and determine the effectiveness of intervention. Adjust teaching methods and provide that continued support. So
we have a question from the group, and they wonder if you have any progress monitoring forms or diagnostic assessments that they could use with their students.
So I do know, if we're talking about specifically about word recognition, there are some free diagnostic tools that are published by Really Great Reading.
And I could probably send those out afterwards.
Yeah, that would be great. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I can give you a list of some, but that one is free. There are also some that are built into or part of a screener, or there's also some, depending on what curriculum materials you're using, they might be in there. For example, I know that, I think Foundations has a diagnostic, if you're familiar with Foundations, but I'll definitely share some of those resources for diagnostic. Thanks, Ed.D.
You bet. And as we're wrapping up here, should we just kind of cover a few of the reflection questions?
Yeah. I was just gonna, can you flip to the screen slide before? I just wanted to say I would use the same approach that I use for the simple view of reading to think about where your strengths are, as well as areas of need in terms of Scarsborough's rope. So think about when you're looking at assessments, do we have a tool that measures vocabulary? Do we have a tool that measures verbal reasoning? How are we progress monitoring that? How are we really looking at our curriculum materials? Are curriculum materials really strong in building content knowledge and background knowledge? And also, is our curriculum materials really strong in helping develop phonemic awareness and decoding? So these two models are really a great way to help you think about needs of students, curriculum needs, and assessment needs. And it's a great way to just really ground the conversation in the research.
I think what we'll do, based on the time we have, is we will send out the reflection questions to the group along with a couple of the resources you mentioned, because I think that would be useful for them to spend a little bit more time than we have really thinking about some of those questions that you had in regard to their reading instruction and just student needs. As a reminder, everyone, next month, we will have another guest speaker, Dr. Chad Dumas. He will be talking about his book, Let's Put the C in PLC. So if you're interested in that, you are welcome to register. Information will come out via email. And if you do take this survey, so if you can use your phone to fill out the survey, you get entered into a drawing. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Well, as soon as you have captured that, it looks like everybody's close. There you thumbs up.
Do we get a prize if we do this?
Yep, you get a prize, and the odds of winning, 1 in 3, is not too bad. So what you're going to win is a $25 gift card for a place of your choice.